Welcome to the 2026 Dialogue, a masterclass series by the HR Association of India. I'm Neha Jagnani, and today's session focuses on a theme that is redefining how organizations think about growth, productivity, and performance. The topic for today is the new performance economy, why capability, not headcount, drives growth. To help us unpack this important shift, we are joined by Dr. Brillian SK. Dr. Brillian is the EVP and Chief People Officer at TimesPro, where he champions a performance driven culture with a strong focus on learner centric approaches, with expertise in talent development, recognition programs, and executive leadership coaching. He has been instrumental in building high performing teams and driving operational excellence. His strategic leadership supports TimesPro's expanding business landscape, empowering the workforce through impactful initiatives. Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining. It's always a pleasure having you.
Thank you, Neha. Thank you, HRAI, and welcome everyone on the 2026 dialogue. Looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you so much, Brilliant. So, to begin with, my first question for you is many organizations invest heavily in learning but struggle to see the performance outcomes. So, I want to know what shifts learning from an activity into a true performance driver.
Thank you, Neha, for bringing in that word struggling into the context because that's the ground reality. And I would say learning can truly become a performance driver when it is pulled by the business pain, not pushed by what we as HR professionals or L&D professionals would calendarize it, right? So what I would suggest is we look at three different shifts. First is start with the outcome in mind, not the content. Content is dime a dozen that is available. Ask a simple question to the business. What should change on a Monday morning? And that will give you the direction to move.
Right.
Second, which is mostly underrated and often sidelined, I would say, not that it's ignored, but sidelined, is manager acting as coaches. Today, unfortunately, it's all about visibility, attendance, and honestly, if a manager focuses only on that, I think the learning dies an automatic death on the job itself. And third, most important is look at a change in behavior. Why do we initiate any kind of a learning and development initiative for someone in the organization? It is to X, Y, Z. But until and unless we are able to measure that behavior, it will not change. Unfortunately, what happens is we feel ecstatic and on top of the world when we get a 5 out of 5 rating for the training from the participants. But on a business front, it doesn't matter. So I would say focus on performance that comes from the context. Be aware that today we have amazing tools that can create content for you. You just name it, and in in microseconds, I would say, you will have content for a, an amazing program that you have never ever created. But the real shift, I would say, is learning programs to learning in the flow of work. Because that's the critical element. And as professionals in human resources and I would say L&D, we should always remember the fact that picture abhi baki hai mere dost, because training is just a trailer to it. The real film is the performance. If you're able to get that performance, I think you have a super hit film that can cross 1,000 crores or whatever numbers you want to put to it. But that is the business outcome that I would try for.
Sure. Thank you so much. Very insightful and very crisp. So you said you start with the outcome in mind. Then there is manager. When they act as coaches, it becomes much more easier to get their understanding.
True.
Last but not the least, looking at the change in behaviors. How are you measuring that? And to conclude with, you said it's not the training programs. It's actually what happens after that makes a lot of difference. So thank you so much. My next question, Brilliance, is in a fast scaling business like TimesPro, how do you keep the workforce learner centric while still maintaining high accountability and results?
Okay, so I just want to bring to the fact that last Sunday we had the Tata Mumbai Marathon, and I go back to the time when it started as Standard Chartered Mumbai Marathon. There were very few people who would run. Today there are There are literally, if I look at it, I think it was around 69,000 plus people who ran. That's a big number. So if you look at life across, not just as marathon, but also at work, in the learning culture, everywhere, change is happening at a pace that we never anticipated. And at TimesPro, I'm very happy to share this that we realized very early in the journey that being learner-centric is not being comfort-centric. Be very clear about it. Learner-centric doesn't mean कि यार you do everything that is comfortable for you. It means three things, and I would put it as an acronym WHW. Know what good looks, right? In terms of saying that this is good. People say, oh, this is good. But we need to know what good looks like. The second part is the H, which is how do I get there? And third, and the most important, is by when. If you are able to fill these three things, I think it becomes so crystal clear that life is easy. While, yes, we need to understand that learning today is changed. It is no longer based on saying that I need you to do it. Until and unless it comes from the learner themselves, it will not work. Give them freedom in how they learn, but be firm on the results that they need to deliver. Short learning sprints, real problems, everything is fine. But when you look at a business, and now I'm stepping back into the role of a business person right now, is if I have to scale business, speed matters. So I cannot just say, ठीक है यार, take 2 years and then come back. Reality today, unfortunately, Neha, is the the pace of change today is unbelievable. What worked yesterday may be no longer relevant today. But what's critical is knowing that the direction in which we have to move. And in the marathon lingo, we say that भागते तो सब है, लेकिन पहुंचता बहुत कम लोग हैं. Everyone wants to finish that marathon in record time, sub 2, sub 4, sub 6. But reality is it needs to be focused on it. And today, as work becomes more digital, we have to realize that the need for speed along with quality. I remember my boss used to say, give me quick and dirty work. What he meant literally was, do whatever you want. You have this much time. You give me an outcome which I can sell to the client. Right? Quick and dirty, which means speed, quality. Today, the world is all about collaboration. Focus on collaboration and the learning agility. Because today, while all our parameters focus on just outcomes, I would say if we are invested in the input parameters, the output parameters automatically start showing an uptick in the way. So I would say unless you, every individual, own it, be accountable for it, take responsibility at every level, right from the team member to the department head to maybe the CEO, it will still be a struggle and everyone would keep saying time nahi hai. So I think that's the shift that we need to bring in, and we need to be very clear. The focus has to be on the keyword that you said in your question, which is accountability. Be accountable, and that's the only way we can move forward.
Sure, sure. Absolutely. I think everybody should hear this, especially in the dynamic business landscape, that learner centric is not equal to comfort centric. And beautifully put, the acronym WHW, what looks good, how do I get there, and by when, becomes the key. And to conclude with, obviously, collaboration, learning agility becomes very important. The internal work, if you focus on, it will automatically be aligned with the outcome that you want to see. So thank you so
True.
much, Brilliant, for that. The next question now, Brilliant, is recognition is often seen as a soft lever. From your experience, how can recognition programs be designed to consistently reinforce the high performance?
This is one of the most ambiguous aspects that we've ever dealt with. And as HR professionals, we know that we never get recognized. And if at all we get recognized, people are, अच्छा ऐसा क्या कर दिया? Right. So now what we have to look at it, take a take a different perspective on it. We need to focus on making recognition as a true performance lever. And again, I'm saying it's a true performance because what we call as checklist activity or an Excel sheet performance is not we are looking at. It needs to be specific, it needs to be timely, it needs to be appropriate. I was thinking about this appropriateness for a long time. And most important, it needs to be linked to business impact because Each time we just say, "Arey, very good job," you give them maybe a voucher. But is that the appropriate kind of a recognition that the person deserves? Is something which we've never assessed. We just go with the flow and do what we always do, right? Sharma ji ka ladka kar raha hai, to we will also do it. But look at the appropriateness of that recognition. And I can tell you from experience, when we look at that appropriateness in context, it changes the dynamic so much that people come back, even if they don't get the money or that big trophy, they come back and start contributing effectively. And
Right.
my experience is, don't 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 reward effort in isolation. The problem is we just look at it from one small perspective and say, अरे इसने तो बहुत कुछ कर दिया. But think big. Has it really moved the needle that impacted the business? It is okay to make recognition frequent. It should not be a year-end activity. It should be visible for everyone. Today, the challenge is, Neha, I can tell you from experiences, if XYZ person is not in the good books of his or her or their team manager, that person's visibility is zero. So we need to start looking at life from a different perspective. Can we make this recognition peer visible, junior visible, top up, everywhere and link it to your core values? It doesn't matter. Recognize every single time what are the kind of behaviors you want to see repeated. And it's not about personalities, right? It's about an individual. We cannot just classify and say every person will fit the cut. Now, the biggest challenge and therefore the opportunity is, how do I create an inclusive and bias-free option that can truly recognize these contributions and not based on manager suggestion? And that's where I said, make it peer visible, make it visible to people under you, above you, so that anyone who sees it and it's aligned to the values of the organization, behaviors that you want to see, just go ahead and do it. And I can share something what we did at TimesPro recently is we were looking at what is it that we can do slightly different. While it's not a great, what I could say, out of the box thought, but we said, how about looking at a recognition called as Amazing Manager? And now what is expected is we will look at it from a half yearly perspective. If that person has not lost a single person in their team, zero attrition, that person gets recognized as an amazing manager. No monetary reward, a recognition which will be shared across the company. And and I believe that if we do it right, it sends out a clear message that this is the right choice. And this is how we need to do things so that people get an opportunity to be recognized for the right set of behaviors. Now think of it from a business impact. If there is zero attrition, automatically the cycle for business outcomes keeps increasing. It's a small effort, but I think that's something which really is inclusive, bias free, because it's all driven by data, and no one can deny the fact that there is no attrition, there is no attrition. That's it.
Sure. Beautifully put, Brilliant. Firstly, to start with, you said recognition should be the true performance lever. Timely, it should be timely, appropriate, and it should be linked to the business goals. Directly linked to the business. That gives people much more motivation to contribute, in the organization. And of course, don't reward effort in isolation was another good takeaway from this. Um, Amazing example there of the half yearly amazing manager programs by Time Pro. It automatically links to the first point, which is, it is linked to the business. It clearly shows
Yes.
how it is adding value to the business. Thank you so much for that. My next question, Brilliant, is when developing senior leaders, what capabilities matter today? Technical depth, people leadership, or strategic thinking, and how should organization prioritize that?
Senior leaders, development, a big area where people definitely don't want to tread on the wrong foot. And yes, I think it is full of opportunities in that specific area because from my personal experience, what I think is it's not about people, it's not about strategic thinking or technical depth. There is no either or, right? It's a good mix of having everything in perspective and context. It could be a sequence, it could be whatever, but from a bird's eye perspective, if I were to look at it, how we can really develop senior leaders, I would say You start with strategic thinking because that is the one thing that will help you set your direction. Because without direction, anything else that you do is doesn't matter, right? Then comes the key element of people leadership because that is where we what we call as followership needs to be built. Why should I look up to XYZ as a leader? And then comes technical or functional, and I'm taking a cue to add functional to it while you just had mentioned about technical, is because many a times not having that functional or technical depth loses the leader's credibility. And if you have to truly earn credibility, I would say build that technical and functional depth. So if I were to, take that view, I would say at senior levels, the core would be strategy and people leadership. They are amongst the 80% of it. And then you have a 20% which is functional or technical skills, which are more contextual. And every organization should start thinking of skills and judgment rather than just think about saying कि इसको सब कुछ आना चाहिए. I may not be the best person to do it. And there was a book which was written long ago which said that you don't have to do it all alone, right? Which means there are people who will bring in functional or technical skills. There are experts that can help you. And I go back to a movie. Sorry, I can't resist the urge to go back to movies every time. But Lagan, if you look at it, it always brings the fact that जीत टीम की होती है, हीरो की नहीं. Leadership helps convert that learning into performance, and organizations that truly win and stand out will not be the ones which will have content. Content, I said earlier, it's available dime a dozen today. But the one that can really move from intent to translated action. Again, I would say intent alone would not be sufficient. It needs to be translated to action. So I think if we were to sum it up, it's obviously strategy and people leadership at the top, followed by functional and technical skills. 80-20 rule should apply.
Sure. Thank you so much. Just to summarize, it's never going to be either or. It has to be there in place. The ratio, the perspective matters. And I think after a point, your role eventually becomes strategic. You no longer have to deal with operational and transactional stuff. That's when you start to contribute more to the business that you're in. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
This brings us to the last question, Brilliant, which is as organizations grow in complexity, what people practices help sustain operational excellence without creating fatigue or disengagement?
भला उसकी साड़ी से मेरी साड़ी सफेद कैसे? We all always end up trying to compare what someone else has done. So one rule I would say is don't run behind big things or things which others are doing. Instead, focus on small things that can create a big impact. It sounds very preachy, but go back to that, right? During COVID, what is the one thing that everyone longed for? That human connect, right? It's a small thing that made a difference. The same goes for people practices. If you have to sustain excellence, and I would add to it that learning should be a constant. And let me tell you, we all get tired, right? Every year, every quarter, every month, every week, depending on the organization, we go through the same old story. It's like the same content coming in some new bottle. But are we really making a difference today? The world has moved to what we call as learn on the go. Remember the three A's: anytime, anywhere, anyhow. And it's a challenge for all of us. It also becomes a pressure, right? Because when you have this three A's, you really don't know when things will materialize. And that's where each organization, the L&D leaders, the HR practitioners need to be very intentional. Give flexibility, but make sure there is a structure to the flex that is created. We often end up creating endless vanilla skilling programs. I would say stop it. Stop it here and now. Focus and prioritize on few but high impact skills. I know I'm maybe hurting a few L&D leaders out there, but I think we need to shut down calendarized learning. And I have done it at times, bro. We are not overloading calendars. We are working with building with the business. We're trying to create an ecosystem where we are, getting input from the business and creating learning rhythms, which can be relevant to the business. We have tech and AI which has helped us reduce the low cost kind of a work. You don't need grunt work to be done by people. So we have people out there who can really contribute at a much higher level. Some of the learning models today, as I mentioned earlier, are AI generated, and there is uh, nothing to shy about, nothing to hide away from, right? It's okay if a tool, technology, a system is available, why not leverage it effectively? But we need a human on the other side who can validate that this XYZ program will give me the outcomes as desired. And that's where the human element comes in. I think having clear priorities, defining clear and preset metrics, very empowered decision making does the trick. Because today, if I find something wrong, I have a hierarchy, a bureaucracy to cross over. And by the time the decision is made, times have changed, priorities have changed, the business outcomes have changed. And please, my dear L&D professionals, HR professionals, if you're watching this, please replace the constant firefighting. अच्छा ये हो गया ये ट्रेनिंग करा दो. We need to look at it from a marathon perspective, not as a race, which is one time. It's not a 100-meter race. If you need operational excellence, specifically when AI is available, make sure you conserve the right kind of energy, use resources effectively, and bring in the efficiency. I would like to close by saying that a wise person had said, and I quote, standards are set by norms, but there's always a better way to do things. Go find yours.
Sure. Thank you so much. Beautiful way of concluding, Brilliant. Focusing on small things, there should be a human connect, and learning should be consistent, is what is the key in achieving the performance excellence. So, my takeaway, particularly here, is in the constantly evolving business landscape, you got to be relevant and you got to be intentional. As you rightly said, that
Absolutely.
calendarized learnings should be replaced by intentional learnings, programs that actually works, addressing the need of the hour and eventually leading the workforce to the business goal and to address that problem statement. So
True.
thank you so much, Brilliant. This brings us to the end of this masterclass. Thank you for sharing your perspectives. And you have actually reminded us that growth is not driven by numbers, it's actually the capability, it's the clarity and the consistent execution of the plans. So, thank you so much for bringing it up.
Thank you. Thank you, Neha. Thank you, HRAI. Wish you all the very best and Happy New Year to everyone who's watching.
Thank you so much, Brilliant. Wishing you a very happy new year as well. And thank you for always taking out time and sharing your insights.
My pleasure. My pleasure.